Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahar Rose DeVore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, we have one of our TCN members, Rebecca. She is an ex-agency recruiter of only over 20 years. She goes by Bex. She is now a career crossroads, sabbatical, and career break coach who inspires, challenges, and supports you to work towards the best version of yourself. She is an ocean loving, yoga practicing, story seeking, cocktail drinking, regenerative tourism advocate, geez, who lives for tasty food and beautiful places with the people she loves. Having designed life around sunshine and her favorite people who live across two continents, she believes it's all possible once we find our own version of balance. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here on the TCN podcast today. I'm really excited to jump into this conversation with you.
Thanks, Sahara. I can't wait. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Before we jump into all of that good stuff, tell us more about yourself and where'd your passion for travel stem from?
Okay, so originally I'm from the UK and fell into recruitment at the age of about 22, I think, from memory. Really unintentionally, having just come back from a backpacking trip around Southeast Asia and Australia. Um, in 2011, I got the opportunity to emigrate to Australia with my recruitment career. So my husband and I emigrated out there then and have been there pretty much ever since. Um, with regards to my passion for travel, it's an interesting one because I've been asked this a few times, and I've always said, we never really traveled as a family. My dad's family lived in Wales, and so that used to be our sort of summer holiday. We very rarely went abroad as a family. I remember doing sort of French exchange, but that was as an individual. And so it wasn't really until my rite of passage through Southeast Asia and Australia when I was backpacking after university that I think I really fell in love with travel. But after people has asked me this, I actually was thinking about it the other day and a memory came back to me. And I thought, yeah, I think that is actually probably the earliest memory of where I really got that taste for it. And my auntie did an exchange program. She was a teacher and she went to New Zealand for a year. I was only 6, but I remember building a scrapbook with her writing to me and sending me things about what she had been doing. And I followed her whole journey for that year. And I kind of think that even though I wasn't doing the traveling, that sparked that there was a whole different world out there, outside of my small little, world in the UK. And I think that probably is really what sparked an interest in it, because I then subsequently actually did a degree in leisure and tourism. So travel was a big part of that. And then obviously landing in Bangkok at 21 was when I just, my eyes were opened and I was like, oh my goodness, this is me. I know that there's a whole different, new, exciting world out there.
I love that. I love that it was, you were so young and your aunt is sending you these pieces back and that it enabled you to really expand your mind and be like, there is a whole world out there because it's really hard for us to think of that when we're so young, right? I know what for myself, no one in my family traveled. Like no one traveled for business, no one traveled. We traveled in the family van across the US. But I didn't know such thing as like other countries, that there were other countries you can go and like visit and stuff. I mean, I know we traveled to Mexico, but to me that was it was connected by land. So it was just
Mm.
an extension of our country and where my grandma's family lived. But it's so important for kids to be exposed to, what is all out there. But I love that. Is throughout all your travels, is there a trip in particular that really made a big impact or transformed you in some way that you can think of?
Oh my God, there's so many. There's so many. I think if there's one, there's probably two that really were turning points for me. the first one, and I can talk at marathon running in around Uluru in Australia. I've walked the Great Wall of China and partied in Rio for carnival, and done safari and seen the Great Migration, and all of them had an impact obviously in some way. But I think the two defining trips for me, one was climbing Kilimanjaro, and the reason that it was defining for me was because actually it was my introduction to intentional travel. So I had always gone with the flow. I was a bit of a wing it, kind of let's see what happens when we get there type of traveler. And I was traveling and climbing Kilimanjaro with a very good friend of mine, and she was all about spending local, ensuring that the money stays within the community, and really that regenerative sort of travel piece. And so she was really intentional around who we were climbing with, who we were booking with, what their story was. And she really introduced me to that. I'd kind of come across tourism leakage when I did my degree, but I hadn't touched on it since. And it was that trip that opened my eyes to the fact that, if I was booking with Intrepid or I was booking with a giant conglomerate, it might not be really impacting the community. And so we climbed with an amazing company called Kilimanjaro Heroes. They had an amazing story. They're super local. They were two guys that really grew up in Moshi and created this amazing company. And the whole experience was just incredible. And that is where I decided to start my travel blog called Community Back Pocket, which is all about advocating against tourism leakage. So really educating people to know where their dollars are being spent, and that it is really impacting the community in a positive way, and that we're using travel for good. So that was one. And then my second one, which is an obvious one, is my sabbatical trip in 2016-17. And that basically changed my husband and I's whole life. So we very intentionally took a sabbatical because we were at a bit of a crossroads. We had three main areas of travel involved in it: going back to the UK to see whether we could maybe go back and live there. Did we want to do that, being expats in Australia and missing friends and family? So that was part of it. We also wanted to experience France. We had years ago bought a derelict barn in France, so we wanted to really explore France and see whether that was part of our future. And then we wanted to be able to travel and really step into sacred space to be able to dream up what we wanted life to look like. And that trip was where we decided, we dreamed up our ideal life. We created a 5-year plan. We went back to Australia and put that plan into process. And it's basically what has got us to where we are today, living a somewhat location independent life, and me totally pivoting on recruitment into coaching.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot. Your experiences are just so diverse in the impact that they've had on your life and where you are and what you do today. Let's go back to the first one with the Kilimanjaro one. And you talk about tourism leakage and you talk about regenerative tourism. I hear intentional travel in there and even immersive travel too. Those are topics that are really on the rise right now. And a lot of travel coaches, travel professionals, travel companies are trying to be more mindful. So, mindful travel, we hear as well. We're trying to empower, encourage, inspire travelers to be more intentional with where they spend their money and the impact they make on the communities they travel to and the impact that they make on the land and the environment, sustainability. It all kind of meshes together, right? When it comes to and the fact that you experienced something like that before, is there anything that you could recommend or say to travelers themselves of how can they start this? Like, so easy when we see these big companies like Intrepid and the bigger names to be able to book through because that's where the marketing dollars went to. So it's easier, it's going to reach us. How do people find these experiences that they can be a lot more intentional and more immersive into.
Yeah, and you're right. It's where the marketing dollars go, but it's also naturally as human beings, we're quite skeptical. So we trust the big brands. I know that for me, when we were looking into who to climb Killy with, it was more challenging, rather than just booking with a big brand and everything being done. It was more challenging. There was a time delay because of the, time difference. The English wasn't as good. And so, you don't immediately get that confidence, I suppose. What I would really advise individuals to do is, first of all, it's acknowledging whether you care and whether you want to, we call it sticky spend in Australia, whether you want to, be aware of where your dollars are impacting. I think it's all about education, because I do think as humans, naturally we will care. Generally, I think we're good people and we do care. So it's about that sort of education, and that's where I'm so excited that it is on the rise, and we are really exposing it at the moment. But it's about then finding an avenue where you can uncover whether the money is being spent where they say it's being spent, and whether that be through blogs, whether that be through Pinterest at the moment, I think is a great avenue for travel. And just Googling regenerative travel, locally owned businesses. There are certainly more and more companies coming to fruition. So, for example, in Australia, instead of Airbnb, we have something called Ride, and that is a locally owned, very similar platform, but it's all in Australia. It's Australian properties, and the money stays in Australia. So I think it's about the research piece, and then partnering with the right travel operator or tour operator that will actually ensure that your money is staying local.
Yeah, education is huge around that, because like you said, I think at the heart of it all, people do care. If we want to travel, we love travel. We are not trying to damage the communities. We're not trying to damage the planet. But there's so much to know around all of that. So that's really great pieces of information for people just to get started with it, because I do hear of these incredible experiences that people have with these local tours. I know for myself, when I was trekking through Machu Picchu, I didn't book online. I didn't book through a big company. We got to Cusco, we walked around and we talked to different local agencies, and it saved us so much more money, because
Yeah.
hearing what we hear from the people who did book in advance online, it's like that was a fraction of the price, but it's just a different experience too. But you also won our very first Travel Coach Network pitch competition winner last September. So that's something that we offer to members and graduates of the Travel Coach Certification Program. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because you were talking in that pitch about your coaching business when it comes to sabbaticals and career breaks. So I want to kind of transition into that here. You mentioned where you got your start into that sabbatical that really changed the life for you, trajectory of your life for you and your husband. What what should people even care about? I hear sabbaticals and career breaks, they're on the rise. Like there's more and more people talking about this and doing it. Why should people care? What should they be thinking about? What kind of tips and information do you have for those maybe considering and overcoming the limiting beliefs that they might have around it?
So I think it depends whether you're an individual or a company on like the benefits, because I'm an avid believer that there are benefits to both, so the employer and the employee, if we're talking about sabbaticals. So I suppose how I like to define it is sabbaticals are, in my eyes, certainly where an individual is employed and takes a period of time off, whether that be paid or unpaid, and still retains their role or a headcount within the company and goes back to that company. Whereas a career break can be, a break in company, finishing with one and then starting with another one. I think generally for an individual, why should they care, or what are the benefits? For me, it kind of goes into two buckets. So the first bucket is the no regret policy. Okay, so it's about, and Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Work Week talks about mini retirements, and it kind of falls into this bucket. Why wait until 65 to live 15-20 years and kick your bucket list? Take a career break. It can give you time to reflect, reassess your career goals, be intentional about what you want to do with the future. Is there something that you've always wanted to pursue? I think that no regret policy is something that in 10 years' time you can look back and sort of feel accomplished, that actually I didn't just cruise and fall into things. I intentionally took these mini retirements or these small career breaks to really think about, okay, what does future me want to look like? What does my future want to look like? So that's the first piece for me. The second piece for me is prevention versus cure. It's a known fact that 2 out of 3 sabbaticals or career breaks happen to you. So, whether that be burnout, whether that be grief, whether that be your own health issues or a family member's health issues, but they happen to you. So prevention versus cure for me is around actually that opportunity for rest and rejuvenation yourself, combating burnout, increasing overall resilience, being able to come back with a new perspective. If you're coming back to a role which maybe there's a lot in the press at the moment around bored out, which is where you're kind of just, going through the motions and kind of out of love with your role. So actually taking a career break and really coming back with a new kind of lease of life and a bit of innovation and creativity. So those are the two things I think for an individual. And then for an organization, it's everything from recruitment, so attraction and retention, putting my recruitment hat on. It's around setting your business apart from others and really, I suppose, that employee brand piece. It's a great tool to reduce burnout and increase that creativity and innovation of bringing new ideas back into the team, and that whole sort of engagement and culture piece. We know that certainly when travel is involved, there are a huge amount of leadership skills that people can develop and learn and then bring back in as a leader. And also succession. The last piece for the employer is that succession planning and talent management. If somebody is going on sabbatical, it leaves a gap for somebody to be able to elevate into, maybe act into, so you can really identify talent through your organization. So those for me are the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who've gone on, career breaks or sabbaticals as well, just because they were at the point of reaching burnout where they're like, I'm either going to quit or I need some time. And what the people that I do know turn to travel. So where do you see a fit between the connection of sabbaticals and or career breaks and traveling?
Yeah, and look, I think it comes down to the why of why somebody is taking that career break or sabbatical. It is so very personal. And there's a story, actually. I worked with a client last year who had got this absolute plan in her head around what she wanted to do on her sabbatical from a travel perspective. And it was around a sort of very exotic challenge that she, it was either going to be climbing a mountain, or it was going to be, going on this big sort of long walk or doing a marathon in a location. But it was this whole sort of, it had to be big and a real challenge. And when we actually sat down and we uncovered the why and what she wanted to get out of not only the career break, but the travel piece, it absolutely, there was a disconnect. So she actually was, as you mentioned, closer to burnout, I think, than she realized, um, and actually needed to just invest in her whole well-being and the whole health and the whole rejuvenation piece. Totally and utterly recrafted the travel and where she was going and what she was going to do because of her why. With regards to how travel can be involved in a sabbatical or a career break, there's many different reasons that people take a career break or a sabbatical. So we joke that a MBA is like the most acceptable, socially acceptable career break, you know, and normally that's done in a different location. So sometimes that's how travel gets sort of laced through that further education piece. Volunteer work is another one that a lot of people embark on. And of course, there's many organizations that support individuals from a travel perspective around whether that be, I don't know, environmental conservation, you know, humanitarian aid, disaster response. That brings travel into it. Health and wellness, you know, we have seen a huge rise on the whole retreat piece, whether that be a yoga retreat, a wellness retreat, you know, detox, going for a silence retreat or meditation. And that often brings travel in and people actually going somewhere to do that. A big reason that my clients take career breaks is for that reflection, as I said, you know, having no regrets. So what does future me want to look like? And I would say 9 times out of 10, travel becomes a component of that because it gives somebody liminal sort of space and time, right? It's away from their ordinary. It takes them out of their very routine environment. And then also the whole, if I think about it, even on a smaller level, some people take career breaks to, you know, they might have wanted to write a screenplay or a book or something like that. And even to the point where they might stay generally at home, but they feel more inspiration in nature. So I've had a client who is Sydney based, but has weaved throughout the 6 months time in the Blue Mountains to go and write. And so, you know, it's only an hour up the road, but it's still travel and taking them outside of the norm and giving them that sort of space to sort of be creative.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about that first story with that client where she thought that she wanted to climb mountains and do all these exotic, crazy things on her trip. But you talked about helping her identify her why. And that's really what we talk about as the fundamentals of travel coaching. So helping people figure out, where is this motivation for wanting to get away? Where is this motivation for taking a trip? Where is this desire for an escape coming from? And when you can help people get to the root of that, you can then help them make better travel decisions, which is what it sounded like you helped her do. She identified, you know, what type of experiences she actually needs to have based off of what she really is searching for, right? So there was that rejuvenation, there was that self-care, there's that healing aspect to it, versus all the adventurous stuff she thought she wanted to do might have just kind of added to the burnout rate that direction she was going into. And, you know, when we think about travel experiences as a whole, we don't often think about these intentionally, right? And that's why travel
Mm.
coaching has been something that has gained a lot of popularity, is because when you take a step back and you look, you know, kind of zoom out of why we actually travel and what travel does for us. You know, people going on taking a sabbatical or a career break, you know, they could be doing anything. They could be sitting on their couch. They could be, you know, whatever it might be. But there's a reason why people turn to travel. And so you gave some really great examples of just how beneficial travel could be for people in that time, during that time of their life, that need of this break or this clarity, um, um, when it centered around a career. But a
I
question
think
that, yeah,
I think when it comes down to travel coaching and it's the coaching piece. specifically. That is, it's around peeling back the layers from what we think we should be doing. This particular client, everybody that she'd known that had taken a sabbatical had done something, that she deemed was big and this sort of big ticket item. And so it was this preconceived idea or societal norm and it's the coaching piece that peels away those layers to actually, as you say, find what do you need. Don't worry about society, don't worry about other people and what they've done. What's going to be right for you? And it's so individual. You're right.
Yeah, because everywhere, every type of travel experience, every destination, every culture out there that we want to immerse ourselves into, all of it brings something different to us. It can and so that's why it's so important to be intentional of where you're going, how you're traveling, who you're traveling with, how long you're traveling for, because again, there's just, do we need to be outside in nature? Do we need, like you gave the example of the client who needed inspiration to write. And there's a lot of research behind how travel can spark creativity, spark innovation, inspire us to really open our minds and get us clear on those get our creative juices flowing. And people don't really realize that until we're just in the moment or afterthought of, hey, travel that really, spending that time in the Blue Mountains really did help me. And that's really what we're trying to do in the world of the Travel Coach Network, is just help people open their eyes to intentional travel and really using travel as this vessel to reach these certain goals that we have, whether they're personal, whether they're professional, whether they're internal. There's travel something we've all turned to for so many different reasons. So really just bringing it to the forefront. So you've given some really great examples with the clients that you've had there. When it comes to something that I think thought about as, someone, is the mindset around the finances. So you mentioned how people can just either, take a break or take these like small retirements. Like the book said, but I'm sure there's a fear for people around, I can't do that. Like, I can't just leave my job. I can't just not work. How do you help your clients around that? Or what kind of information do you have around that?
Around finances specifically, or mindset generally?
Well, the fear of like, I can't not work. I can't take this time to myself. I can't take a break. I need to work. I need to make money. I have bills to pay.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to mindset more generally. And for me, one of the biggest, or there's probably finances is a big one, but the other really big one is almost this guilt, and it's guilt around, I can't leave my family, or I can't leave my pets, or I can't, oh my goodness, my poor co-workers, I'm on this project and so we do a lot of work around mindset. And it also is, I think it's important to talk at the point that it doesn't have to be now. If you've started thinking about a sabbatical or a career break and you're in the bucket of, oh, I don't know, and it's finances that I'm struggling with, or it's the guilt of leaving X person or X situation, it's then around actually us forging a plan to get there. So it doesn't have to be, and also allowing the permission and really getting the client to allow themselves permission to put a plan together to get them there. When it comes to finances, there's a lot of tactical work that we do. And again, it comes around to priorities. So I have worked with a client where they absolutely did not believe that they could afford to do it. But when we really broke down the finances and they talked through their priorities, they were totally shocked around how much they could save, a week. They were mind blown when they actually put down what they spent, what their priorities were, and how important this break was to them, and then sort of tallied it up. So I think sometimes it's just And this is where the coaching comes in, and this is where I think the gift of coaching is around, um, when you're in the moment, it's really hard to see the obvious. And by asking the right questions and by doing some of the right activities together, and having that sacred time of coaching, actually you can, kind of open their eyes to things that they didn't even know were possible.
Yeah, that's so true. And it, as when you were explaining that, it's the same thing came to mind of like when people have limiting beliefs about the finances, about taking a trip in general, right? Like I can't go on a trip, I can't travel, it's too expensive, or the thought is, the traditional book with a travel agent and it's going to cost a lot of money. Um, or whatever it might be because of the marketing and the resources that we have these days that, or has been over the years, in my opinion, has really driven the idea that travel is not attainable for everyone,
Mm,
or it's luxury, or it's something people can only do once a year. And so it's the same thing like that. So I think that you're spot on. It's really just helping people kind of zoom out and take a look at the picture, the bigger picture, and understanding like where do your priorities lie? Like what do you need most? Because I think especially women, especially moms too, we put others first and we don't really think
mm,
about what we actually need and what we actually want. And we're such caregivers and take, you know, care of the family, and we care about people in the job and the tasks they're going to have to take over of ours and stuff like that. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of really incredible work with your clients, and it's something that I know is going to be growing even more because like I said, I see the term sabbatical and career breaks speckled all over the place these
mm,
days. And it's something that companies are really going to have to start paying even more attention to.
mm.
And especially when it comes to what does travel look like for your employees, for your company culture in general, and where do you value all of that?
I think also it goes back to somebody's why as well. I've just had a story come into my head where, and it wasn't actually a client, it was a friend that I was having a conversation with, and they had said, oh, they were going to lose 2 weeks of leave if they didn't take the leave. And so they were like, oh, but I can't afford to go away, and I can't afford to go on this big trip. This is where I want to go. And we sat down over wine and talked about, okay, what do you want to get out of the 2 weeks? Why, what do you want to feel like at the end of it? How do you want to spend the 2 weeks? And in the end, all they did was go 45 minutes up the road, but that's still travel. And they experienced everything that they wanted for probably quarter of the price of what they thought that this big trip should look like for the 2 weeks. So again, it's getting back to the why and what you want out of it and how you want to feel throughout, but also after. And I do a lot of work with clients around what they want future them to look like, and how can this period of time and the travel really help them and be a catalyst to future them.
I love that. I don't think a lot of people do that. And it's a really important piece because it's like you said, it's really hard to get out of what we feel like in the moment. Like, this is what my life is involved with right now. This is my choices right now. This is my job right now. And it's hard for people to take a step back and say, like, what do I really want out of life? What do I really want for myself? So
Mm,
the fact that you work with your clients on that, and it's very true. You've said this a couple times. You don't have to go very far to travel. Travel does not mean you have to get on a plane and go abroad and spend weeks in a country or backpack the world. Travel comes to us in so many different ways. There's so much travel just within our own community too. Learning the
mm,
culture and the nature that we have, things we don't often think about, bodies of water nearby that we overlook. So for those listening, like you feel like you want to take a trip or you need to use your vacation days, don't think that you have to spend a lot of money and go abroad or travel or have these big goals. We can incorporate travel in so many different ways here. But Rebecca, as we kind of wrap it up here, I always love to ask my guests, is there a fun fact about yourself? It doesn't have to be business or travel related that you can share with our listeners.
My fun fact is probably that for half the year, at the moment anyway, I am a builder's labourer. So nothing to do with travel, nothing to do with coaching, but my husband and I are renovating a 16th century barn in rural France. He is the CEO, he knows what he's doing, and I am the builder's labourer. So I'm mixing cement, I'm pointing in walls. I'm, doing all of the sort of hard yards. That's my fun fact.
I love that. You're gonna have to let me know when it is open. Maybe we can do a TCN
We could do a
retreat there.
retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can me and my family will come visit as well too. But
Always
wonderful.
welcome.
Rebecca, it's always a joy having you, not only on the podcast today, but a member and graduate of the Travel Coach Certification Program. You're such a shining light in all that you do, and just a great example of implementing travel and coaching into how you help your clients best. Where can our followers, our listeners, find and follow and learn more about you?
So probably the best thing is my website, which is feelgood-getaways.com. Also, I'm very active. I spend my whole pretty much life on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of my clients come from. So I'm Rebecca Thomas on LinkedIn, and also Instagram, feel_good_getaways.
Wonderful. Thank you. We will be sure to put all of those links in our show notes. Rebecca Bex, thanks so much for joining us today on the TCN podcast.
Thank you, Sahara. It's always a pleasure.
Everyone, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Learn more at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. We look forward to having you in our TCN Global Community on Facebook. You can find the link for that, as well as your own free beginner's guide to travel coaching and all the links to our guests in the show notes. And if you know anyone who may be interested in travel coaching, please be sure to send them our way to our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.